Fight League Atlantic's Derek Clarke, a man who has been instrumental in getting fights to the East Coast side of Canada, and I'm sure you'll be making it our way as well too. But absolutely so important to give avenues for these fighters, avenue for young men and women to be able to actually display. One of the biggest problems I think we had in Canada as I sort of jumble through that was there wasn't enough proper promotions that were there for the fighters, that were there to actually take care of the fighters and actually sort of bring them up properly. It was just bring guys in, we'll throw people together, we won't really develop. And the one thing you can see on your cards very obviously is you're looking to develop people from the grassroots up and not just bring people in or grab someone when they come off the big circuit. So I really appreciate that about what you guys have done. But Derek, before we jump into Fight League Atlantic, talk about yourself, talk about the grappling. I know that you're pretty intricate and involved in the grappling realm and the grappling side of things in Canada. But talk about your a little bit of your history.
First of all, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for having me on, and great job on not too many people know about the grappling. Like, they know about Submission Kumite and what we do at FLA, but they don't know the background of, like, with Submission Series Pro and all those events that we did, in places like Ontario, in Alberta, and we learned a lot as a team, as a production, doing those things. And that's kind of how we got into MMA. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I don't claim myself to be a fighter, but I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I've been training for 15 years, and I absolutely love it. I teach the kids classes. I have a new little kids school under my coach, Jared McIntosh, Picture Kind of Jiu-Jitsu. And it's just a fun thing. I love the sport, and I love giving back in any way I can. And that's what I say. Like, again, I'm not a fighter, but I think, this sport needs some reputable promoters. And I, to be honest, I hate the word promoter. It's a necessity sometimes in the sport, but, like, let's just call us event planners or what, you know what I mean? Or just like what, it just, to me, I think it's a title that, I don't know. It's a weird title because it comes with so much bad past, I guess.
Well, I think there's more hats you wear than just promoter doing that job. So I think there's multiple things. Like you depending on the promotion's approach and how things are, you also sort of have this sort of coach mentality. There's a community mentality.
Yeah.
Like I said, I can see how you're developing these fighters, and that actually just leads me into the first question. One of the challenges, and I don't know if you directly put the fights together or if you're involved in putting the fights together, or if you have someone do it, and you can answer that in a moment. But the challenge between developing fighters and coddling fighters. So you want to give them the right matchups that sort of give them so they can display their attributes, but you don't want to coddle them. You don't want to have them surprised because when someone else you bring from the United States, when they're at a 5-0 record or whatever it is, comes in and just stifles them and they didn't see it coming, that's not what you want either. No. So what's the challenge between coddling and then also developing?
That's a very good question, and it's super difficult. To be honest, because that's, as I have an analogy that I try to explain to people, like when they say, how does this work? And I say, how you guys, like in a hockey tournament where your schedule ahead of time, the 8 teams or 60 teams or whatever it is that are going in this tournament, and you've played them 3 or 4 times throughout the year or whatever it happens to be. In fighting, I have to make the tournament and then find the teams to play in the tournament and get them agreed to play one another. So it's like a whole challenge and so that's where it comes, obviously, your coaches and your managers and these people who are on top of ourselves as the promotion, looking out for these athletes' career. And, a prime example is Cam Nelson. He the last fight there, main event, took on Christian Tremaine. Not an easy fight. A guy with, 8 pro fights and I think just the same amateur. So Cam's got 2 pro fights and I think he had 3 amateur maybe. So a lot of experience, and he went in there and took the fight. Abdelaziz, another guy, stepping up, taking, just fight after fight, wanted to fight every single card just to make sure he's getting better and taking all these opportunities. And that's what we want to see. And I know that's what the UFC wants to see too. They don't want to see somebody just fighting cans all the time. Like, what's the point of that? When you're going to go from here to whether it's CFFC or wherever, the Contender Series or wherever it happens to be, BFL, Samurai, whatever. At the end of the day, you're going to face people that you're not going to have that experience and knowledge about that here on the East Coast. So going back to your question about bringing them up. Like that's one big thing that we do. It's been a super challenge. John and I, my business partner, we've been doing like so much work on the back end. But I think the respect of the community, that the fact that we're both in the community. John ran a long jiu-jitsu tournament for like 12 years. I ran a bunch of those events and tournaments. We're both in the community and we know everybody. And I think that's the thing. So a lot of the gym owners are our buddies who now have students coming up, and there's that respect because they know like these guys aren't going to mess around. Like they are part of the community. They grow the community, and that's what it's about here. It's a different thing out here. Like I don't know how to explain it, but it's just that East Coast mentality, right?
Well, my family, half my family's Nova Scotian, Cape Breton, so I get it. There's a real, I don't want to say blue collar because there's always this sort of expectation with that, but like a blue collar family down home, we all got each other's back. Even if you just fought the guy, you want to see him do well. Like you're even saying with Cam Nelson, I know Josh Hill's his manager, I believe. And I'm sure you work well with the managers as well too to try to bring these guys up. And for Cam, that's not like Tremaine's not necessarily a crazy risk for him. Like he goes in, I know he loses the fight, but like that's a good step up in competition for him. It was the right challenge for him because he is a highly touted prospect, and I think he's going to learn a lot from that fight. And looking at that, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Just like that's what you want.
Like 100%, 100%. But let's actually, you have some rising stars, and I know that this sort of started out of, I don't know the official story. I know obviously it was the grappling, and then we hit 2020. We're coming out of COVID, or at least there's a glimpse of it. A lot of things have collapsed. There's opportunity, there's openings, and not even just look at it from a shark businessman standpoint, but there's somebody's responsibility to get in there and fill the void. Get in there and actually, because a lot of places collapsed. BTC kept rolling. I know Unified's rolling, and I love having so many organizations up and flourishing now. It used to just be pretty much the score. That's all it was for the longest time. It was pretty much the score for the longest time around Ontario, right? So, talk about that. 2020 hits, and you jump in and put your hat in the ring.
Yeah. So talking about 2020, like our first event February 8th, and we both decided, probably like 3 or 4, probably no, I should say about a year before that, we decided. Let's try this MMA thing. John and I have known each other for a long time. We're both entrepreneurs, and there was an opening here. Like, we just believed that we could do it better. And it's not like from like my background is like in the production is you're talking like 10 years now. I've been running my own show, so like close to 60 shows. And the only big thing that we're missing all along was kind of like taking the leap of faith. And MMA is an expensive venture compared to doing jiu-jitsu shows. So we had to have and do it right. And, that was a big thing. John's a great business guy, and the two minds kind of came together. And my director, Danny Harvey, who's in charge of all the technical stuff that you see, the pay-per-view and everything, that's his profession. So he's my, one of my best buddies since a long time. And it's just a small town. Like we grew up, like we're a town of 3,000 people. So it's a tiny little community, man. And it's just about kind of giving back to like what, like the old kind of story is like, you never had this growing up. So you want to kind of give the kids what you never had. And that's kind of what, like I'm 43, John's 40, I think now, something like that. And that's what it's about, man. Like we have the ability,
100%, man.
Like out here in the East Coast, we got a little chip on our shoulder because we're always overlooked, man. Like a lot, and it pisses me off more than anything when I see promotions putting East versus West, and the East is in Montreal or the East is in Ontario, and it's just the most ignorant thing. Like as a promotion to even do that, it just blows me away. But
even from a standpoint, I'll even put myself on the shelf there. Like it's, as I got the hat on, elf on the shelf. No, but the idea that there's only so much time for me working my job, but then running my podcast, and I go to a Unified card comes up, and it's a big fight, and I put it on, and then and I'll hit this reel, hit that reel, and it's like, well, what about the little cousin on the East Coast? What about you know what I mean? And that's sort of, I know what you're saying. It's sort of how it's looked at, and there's enough fighters coming up right now, and the one thing you got to look at, you guys put on 6 events in 2023, man. How many? Not too many promotions can say they did that, right? Like not too many up and coming promotions that have been around for a couple of years have really grown that much. And I think it has something to do with your business model. I think the idea of really going grassroots and saying, I don't care, we're going to develop these fighters, being able to have somebody with a small record main eventing on a card and being okay with that, making it local, making it smaller, so it's maybe a more affordable production scenario so you can last it.
Yeah.
There's just, I've been looking at this, I've been watching. I'm not just, so there's a lot to this, and it's sort of brilliant. Talk about your 6 events in 2023 and sort of the strategy behind all of it.
That's exactly right, man. It's a grassroots operation. It's about, you know, looking after each other and looking after our fighters, and making sure, you know, first and foremost that it's a business, man. That's what people don't understand in fighting. And like, you know, we deal with a lot of fighters, and some people, you know, at the end of the day, if you're not selling tickets, then it's a giant investment for me to bring somebody in here for you to fight just to lose money. So like, people got to understand that, and that's why things are done. Even at the UFC level, when you're a giant train moving like that, and you have a lot of people to answer to who are on that board, you got to do things and you got to make money. Otherwise, their investments are going to pull out. So, yeah, I don't know. Our year was like it was an incredible year, man. It was it started obviously, you know, FLA 7 with the whole drama between Savoy and Tokai at 185 pounds, and we just had a killer card from there. Like, Cam had a great
Man,
fight. Yeah,
Savoy, I'm sorry. I got to bow down to that man. That man not only finished the show beautifully, but then walked off with a mic drop. You know, even sort of like one of his fellow teammates is a 170er, and he's like, it almost felt like, and I know like he's only down the street from me. They train at House of Champions. I know
yeah,
Savoy came down here, and
yeah.
there was like a chip on the shoulder moment. It's like, oh yeah, well I'm here too. I'm 170, and I'm the best welterweight in Canada. And it was like, I'm sure even Mike looked at that like, hell yeah, like that's the way you got to approach it. That's the way you got to do it. So pretty awesome.
Exactly, you know, like you know, Christian's had a rough go. Like, you know, he's, you know, like we've looking for fights for him for a lot. Samurai tried to have a fight for him, it didn't work out, and so very difficult for a fighter, especially when you're 8-1-1 and you're coming off that draw, and you want to get back in there and prove yourself. And Pixley, he came up, he was willing to take the fight, and it was a great fight for the fans, great fight for Christian. Put on a great finish. His last one at FLA 12 coming into this main event now, which was great. But going back to 2023, you know, FLA 8, we had Terry Lemaire down, which was good. Another Ontario guy. I think Justin Condi was on that card as well as the main event. Beautiful finish. And then all the way through, man, like the thing that, like, we try to add something, elements to our, you know, every event we try to add to our production a little bit or change things, whether it's in-house or whatever. But FLA 11, which was a double event, you know, trying to challenge yourself a little bit. So we did the Kumite Friday night and the MMA event Saturday night, which worked out beautifully. It was an incredible weekend. And that's super important for us to keep the grappling community involved. You know, like they're a big part of our fan base out here on the East Coast. So keeping them involved and giving them something to look forward to a couple times a year is, you know, with the big production and stuff. So we're going to do that a couple times a year as well. Just keep these kumites going. And but FLA 11, everybody said, man, this was the best card yet. And then FLA 12 came along, and people, the same thing. This was
now we got 13 on the horizon. We got 13 coming up in February. Pretty excited for that one. Now, what is is there any fight announcements for that one yet? Are we looking at the Tremaine Savoy as the main event for that one?
That is the main event for the title. Yeah. So our first pro title, we obviously tried to do that already with Dokai versus John Moore in the summer, and that fight didn't come through. So this will be our first pro title, which is exciting for us.
Amazing. And one thing I will talk to you about is I definitely want to as much rights to footage as I can get, because I want to put out reels to hype up that especially that main and that card. It's time. So I'll put together some reels for FLA and show some love. Considering, you know, it's in my blood to be, you know, the East Coast side of my family, Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. I got to show love to the cousins down in the East Coast. So definitely.
I appreciate it, man, very much.
To talk about some of these guys, like we got Tremaine, we got Savoy, we got Abdelaziz, a guy coming in who highly touted submission, just very scary dude, and just wants to fight over and over again. I mean, right now he's just 2 fights under his belt, but you know, a year or two from now he could have 10 fights under his belt real quick with how his turnaround is. So awesome. Ben, how do you say his last name? Is it Leese?
Leese, yeah.
Leese? Ben Leese. That dude, he needs to win a bunch of fights, and why he does is because we need to get him on a platform on a big screen, and that man needs to go. He's like the belief in that guy, and then he goes in there and just he's a son of a bitch.
And I'm not going to say this person's name, but a person who's very well respected and very high up in the industry told me that that is the biggest prospect he's seen in many, many, many years. So
Yeah, I mean,
you might
he's
want
got a
to.
good, well-rounded package, man. I mean, it remains to be seen about the fight, and as he moves up, like
Yeah.
fighter to fighter and level to level. But there's a whole bunch of the other package there. It's already there and sort of plug and play, man. He just needs to keep working camp to camp, and I love the belief. When they're talking shit, but you can see that like they really believe it. It's not just a shtick. That's what I'm talking about. They believe in the work that they put in. They believe in themselves. So it's amazing.
He's got incredible potential, and he's got like I won't tell you who he is fighting, but he is fighting at FLA 13. So he's got a very difficult fight ahead of him, a great challenge which he needs, and yeah, I'm very
Awesome.
much looking forward to that fight.
Is there any other fights that on that card right now that you can talk about that are coming up?
We did drop
Sort of juggling.
Jake Kelly versus Gino Galapardez. I believe.
Oh, nice.
Pronunciation hope is okay there, but
I'm still. I didn't. Last time I tried to pronounce his name when I was talking to Josh, I pronounced it wrong. So,
yeah.
but yeah. So we got a local guy coming out of Aegis MMA, and then coming up against who's he going against? Jake Kelly.
Jake Kelly at
badass. That's a good fight.
Yeah, at Tower One with Gavin. So obviously, you know, Jake's another guy we just signed to a pro contract. We have him and Abdel both now signed to pro contracts at the Tower One. Cam Nelson, Christian Savoy, Morgan Rhines, and a couple other guys.
Moving those chains, man. Moving those chains. I love to see it. It's great to see. You know, like I said, Canada just starting to develop. Like, I was talking to somebody. Someone did a reel about John Jones against Lyoto Machida, and I'm just getting so old that I forgot that I had went to an event with my brother. John Jones was the main event. I actually didn't even care about the main event as much as I cared about some of the other fights on the card. Sean Pearson was fighting.
Nice.
Mick Gagnon was fighting. But that was the only Canadians on the card. Mighty Mouse won his belt for the first time, which was great. That's all the fun stuff. But there's only 2 Canadians on the card at the ACC. And if you look at the UFC now and you look at that card, it is stacked almost top to bottom. Sure, there's a couple main spots that need to be taken up by some Canadians, but the belief is real. And I was just talking to Cody Chimonchek of Unified MMA, and he was talking about just how in Canada right now to be an MMA athlete, like it really is it's believable to get to that level. And like even talk about that, just the team of fighters from coast to coast now. It's crazy.
Well, it is, and that's like we look at ourselves as like you know, you can call yourselves regional promotions, you call it whatever you want, but the way we look at it is we're like out here on the East Coast, we don't have professional sports. So like the Halifax Mooseheads, the Moncton Wildcats, the Cape Breton Spring, the Charlottetown Islanders, like these teams are, especially growing up, the Mooseheads, they're playing in front of 10,000 people out here every night as 16-year-old kids, and so that's kind of the example that I use all the time when I'm trying to mentor a lot of these kids. Like, listen, when you're on that microphone, I don't want to hear you swearing. I want to hear you, like, and the commission's the same way. And I know that's difficult for some people to understand or, you know, and they can hate on me for it too. But like, you don't hear these kids when they're being interviewed in the middle of the hockey game swearing. And yeah, it's not fighting, it's hockey. But at the end of the day, if you want the sport to grow, you need to hold yourself accountable and act like a professional. And that's how the sport is going to grow. And that's what's made our events successful. Super fan friendly, very kid friendly events where people come and have a great time, and you can have a ton of beer, but there's no like it's just a great time. And I think that's the same way all across the board in Canada. When you look at these events, everybody's doing it in a great way, in a classy way. And
well, that whole idea you're talking about is rooted in us in hockey, right? Like, I mean, a down home Saturday night in any small town across the nation, you know, before there was, you know, I mean, you have your main big teams, and before, say, even the Raptors came around and the Blue Jays were big, if you looked at it, people were watching hockey, people were going to their local rinks, they, you know, they'd go to parties afterwards or whatever it would be, and that's what that was our version of what the, you know, in the United States they have the football on Friday nights, and that's our version, right? And you guys have sort of captured that and turned it into some fights. So
trying, awesome. Man, that we're trying, like, and that's exactly what it is. Like, our events aren't like, we say it all the time, it's not like these typical events where you'll see it's like all tables and it's all like corporate and very quiet. Like our events are very loud, all younger
They should be.
people. It's a different kind of atmosphere out here, and it's a fun one, and it just keeps growing every event, and it's been incredible to be a part of and to watch. Some days I sit here and I'm like what am I like I tell my wife, I'm like, what am I doing? This is insane. Like
It's awesome.
it is. It's crazy. Yeah.
And how did
But
that passion for the sport develop, man? Like, I mean, I know for me, and I've shared sort of my story. You know, a lot of people have asked why I didn't train, why I love the sport so much, but I never did. And I've shared my story about, and I don't need to delve down the rabbit hole, my story of alcoholism.
yeah,
And when you're an alcoholic, there's no room for anything else. Unfortunately, there's no room for, if you're a really good one, then you're not focused on anything else. There's no time for fights. There's no time
no,
for anything. So I always found myself around the fights, but never stepped in myself. And I always wondered why. And in recovery, I realized my passion for the sport is part of regret that I
yeah,
never actually stepped in and at least trained at a level and tried to do it. But at the same time, like that passion will never go away. I will do podcasts. I will
yeah,
do as much fighter videos, and I absolutely love the sport. And there's
yeah,
plenty of people around Canada that love the sport as much as I do, and have been following it from day one. So the fact that you put out those fights, the fact that you like, it's so important. Like, and what why I tied in the idea of the alcoholism. What if there was a local fight event that was going on when I was younger that sort of sucked me into it earlier?
yeah,
And that is a legitimate thing.
yeah.
People need, especially now, especially with social media, as much as I use it to an advantage, it's a huge culprit in mental health, and everybody's so anxious and so much
Uh,
shit going on. It's just like, you know what? If a lot of kids were training, doing something, whether it doesn't have to be MMA, but being active, and something grabbed their attention and sort of sucked them into it, they may stay out of trouble. They'd stay, out of drugs, alcohol,
yeah,
and or just, maintain a focus or develop an
yeah.
early consistency in life that they need for life. So that's why I applaud the grassroots approach. I think it's amazing to get families in there. Awesome, awesome job.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's super, like, that's why I teach a kids class too. Like, I don't, like, I'm like a drill sergeant in my kids class. I don't fuck around. Like, I'm like, if you don't want to listen, there's the door. And if the parents don't want to listen, there's the door too. There's no board, there's no commission, there's no nothing. I'm in charge. There's no people I have to answer to. So if you don't like it, and that's how it's going to be. And these kids need to learn to listen, and they need a little structure and discipline because they're not getting it in school and they're not getting it in these other places. So, yeah, man, I think it's super important to this kind of stuff for mental health and for my own mental health. Like, my God, man, like it's a struggle, like doing this kind of stuff. Like, if I don't train and like get out there still, like my wife is like, get like go, like you better get going. Like, and it's just because, and everybody, like you say, man, like I'm not a fighter at all. Like I call it like gentlemen's hockey. I go like train with my buddies and that's it. Like, but it's, you have your way of giving back, and everybody has, and it's such a big community effort. That's what's cool about the sport. And far too often people get, there's people in this, it's a business. So there's still people in this sport that I don't necessarily respect and how they operate. But then at the end of the day, it's also like, man, like it's just healthy, competitive, and how people work, right? And but it's awesome to see the passion that everybody has grow in this sport in Canada, because it really has a lot of potential. Like you said, the Score fighting series back in the day, like that's what I was watching all the time too. And you think about that to now, like it's, the scene's almost better now with way more opportunities for fighters, but still they just came back to what, like TSN, I think the UFC's signed up
Finally, just came back to Sportsnet
Sportsnet.
after so many years of a switch and over to TSN. So that'll be interesting to see where they go with that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but yeah, I mean, I think that MMA has just played such an important role in so many people's lives, and it has developed at such a level now. I mean, it'll only get bigger, right? As more and more fighters become professionals and or semi-professionals. I mean, not semi-professionals, but maybe don't crack the big show, but are
yeah,
still. They open up their own gyms. So when they open
yeah,
up their own gyms, they pass on the knowledge, and the knowledge branches out, and the knowledge grows, and it's up to you to catch some of these fighters and get them on the big stage.
yeah,
On
100.
that note, I'm going to leave it right there. Devin, it's been absolutely amazing. I'd love to have you on again, and maybe even do some breakdown podcasts where you bring your best three bets to the table. We're going to be doing that pretty regularly, and I'd love to have you on to talk about the event before the FLA event coming up in February as well too.
Yeah.
Um,
Love
So
it.
yeah, MMA Mindfield, Kevin
Okay.
Clarke, Fight League Atlantic.